Hey folks, it's Woody here over at USA Made Blade and just coming to you from the shop this Saturday afternoon. Gonna do a quick breakdown video on the ZT0223. And before we get started on that, the only reason you're seeing my ugly mug is because in our last video where we did a bunch of comparison pics and did an overview of the knife, I was telling you guys how smooth it is. And people were like, hey, you're shaking that thing down. I was filming at a real goofy angle. So I couldn't really show off how smooth this thing is, but check that out. Unbelievably drop shut smooth. I've said I think it's the smoothest ZT that's ever come in. I know this is a very polarizing knife, as we've said, but just had to show that off real quick. So let's jump to the mat and show you guys a quick breakdown on this new ZT. All right, so we are back, and here we got the knife, and as I always recommend, Weehaw bits. And for this, I'm using 2 Torx 8 T8s and 1 T6, so all Torx bits. And you don't have to have 2 T8s for this knife, but I'll show you where I think it helps. So anyway, let's get started. This is the way I've been breaking them down. This knife is very simple to take apart. There's really not much to it, but anyway, trying to keep in mind here 2 things. I've been up on a ladder doing some work around the shop this morning, so I'm a little shaky. And also I'm working from behind the camera again, so that's making things a little tough. So here's where, first off, start with the pivot screw, and that's a T8. And then down here, might be able to do it with 1, but I have 2 out here anyway. You start with the handle screws at the bottom, and I like to loosen one side and get it darn near all the way out, and then tighten it back up. I know that seems crazy. And then start on the other side and get that one good and loosened up, and then I will tighten it back just a little. Once you've done this once, unless you Loctite them again, it's not a problem. So then I start by taking this one, the other side out, and hopefully this one will come out. It won't, so it's just gonna spin on me. While I've gone ahead, so we'll get to that other screw here in a minute. So while I've got the knife together and closed and safe, go ahead and get my my G10 scales off here. And most of the time, I mean, we've customized a few of these, and the few times I've done it, the screws have stayed right on these scales, which is kind of nice. Makes it quicker for reassembly. And just get all those set on there. So that's what the G10 looks like, rounds around, and these match up in the back. And then you can see all the Loctite that's coming off some of these screws here. Go ahead and take my pocket clip off. That is also a Torx T6. And the knife is trying to come apart on me. So go ahead and put that up there so those are together. Go ahead and just let this thing come apart. We'll get to the insides of it here in just a minute. Go ahead and finish taking my G10 off. Still sticking just slightly on this side. So there we go. So, oh, let me go ahead and get this off. So now, hopefully I still don't need, well, it's too late now, but hopefully I can hold this on this end. I hate having to put a set of pliers to it to get it off. Yeah, that's coming off. But if you need to, make sure you get your pliers good and insulated with some sort of, you know, towel or tape or something so you don't tear up your your back spacer. And so here we go. So here's the handle itself. Here's the lock side. And then as you can see in here, we have washers that are going in to protect the titanium. Some people really like that and want to see that happen on all knives. And then your bearings, and then your pivot. This washer didn't fall out, so it's still in there. Stop pin, presentation side, and then of course my two G10 scales. Extra screws up here for that one, and then all my parts. So here is this knife, and this seems to be probably the biggest controversy with it, is these little holes right here. As you can tell, that is on the thicker part of the steel. As I said, the designer Tim Galen did a beat up test on it, and I think it broke somewhere around in here. So this is not affecting the strength of the knife at all. But nice thick blade, great design on this, great assembly, and as I showed you at the beginning of this video, incredibly smooth. So let's put it back together. Just take our pivot, match it up, put that in there, and then start with your washer. Make sure that isn't the one that was still in there. It's not. And then put your bearing on there. And I like to get a stop pin in there from this side on the lock side. And then your other bearing, and then as you can see, my washer's still in here. Let me go ahead and put my my spacer on there. And truthfully, before I put all this on, let's just go ahead and take it off. Won't take but a second. So if you only have one T8, then go ahead and put your spacer on there. And some sort of ambulance is running down in front of our shop. Sorry, you're going to hear some sirens. And go ahead and just tighten this up and get that good and tight. I know some people only have one torque set, so go ahead and get it tight on that side. And then, my apologies, get your pivot, your washer, your bearing, your stop pin, get your blade on there, and then your other bearing, and my washer's already in there. And on all of these so far, I've heard a good snap, and you just heard that good snap all the way around. And then from here, I like to put in my pivot screw. And on this one, I like to just get it to where it's got it snug. I'm not tightening up yet. Go ahead and get my handle screw in. And we're going to come back to what we do with the pivot here in a minute. Get my handle screw good and tight. And then close this thing up. Like I said, we're not tight on our pivot yet. And let's go ahead and just put the rest of this back together while we're here. And get your handles back on. And like I said, this is pretty darn simple. There's not much complicated about breaking down and putting this knife back together. I like to just make sure I get all these good and snug. Then go ahead and put my other handle on. These go back together pretty simple. That's the first time I've had a screw fall out of one of them. But so, like I said, this has definitely been one of the most polarizing, controversial knives ZT's ever made. Some people absolutely have loved it. We've definitely been selling them. And some people just don't, and other people are on the fence. It's one of the pricier ZT's made, but when you really get into it and see how much milling and how much machining and how much steel and titanium are on this thing, then you really get an understanding of where that price comes from. Very overbuilt knife, it really is. So there we go, get my pocket clip on. Ooh, I am shaky. We've been doing a lot of work here this morning. So pocket clip is back on. Now, this is a time where if you like to, you can pull your pivot back out and put some Loctite on it. This one's going to be mine, so I will not be Loctiting it right now because I'm sure I'll tinker with it 100 different times. But you remember I didn't tighten that pivot all the way up. I like to, truthfully on these, so far I've been noticing getting it out to a little bit past 90 degrees and tightening that pivot to where I'm feeling some resistance. And usually that's been perfect. Looks to be dead centered. Sorry, I gotta lift it up and look at it. Pretty much sitting dead centered on me. And action on it goes right back. I can't do it from this angle, like I said at the beginning, but incredibly smooth. Absolutely incredibly smooth. So there it is, breakdown video on the ZT0223. Very smooth knife, very polarizing knife. I know a lot of people out there are considering it and just not sure which way to go, but I'm sure we'll have some fun in the comments with this one. But if you're considering one, we hope you'll go over to usmablade.com and take a look and pick one up. We appreciate you watching.